Hi everyone, it's Zandile here on the Miss Masumbuga channel, and I hope everybody is doing well. So today we're going to talk about the Sobukwe clause, and this is an addition to our Apartheid Was Better series. Please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, let me know what you think, let me know that you stopped by, and I hope that you enjoy. So, Mangaliso Robert Sobukwe defected from the ANC in 1958, and he was subsequently elected as president of the Pan-Africanist Congress at its formation in 1959. He and his fellow defectors rejected the ANC's Freedom Charter principle of South Africa belongs to all who live in it, which, to their view, allowed the oppressors to have equal billing to those they oppressed on land belonging to and stolen from the oppressed. Sobukwe argued that whites should be excluded from the ANC's alliance, as it was impossible to have a relationship between blacks and whites until further progress had been made. He argued that a reliance on white people would disempower the realization that many of those Africans had, which is that they had the power to overtake a society that had been taken from them. Sobukwe further rejected collaboration with sympathetic whites, as he considered such multiracial cooperation between slave owner and slave as an ungodly alliance before equality was attained. And tell the truth, all these years later, almost 30 years later, was he wrong? So on 21 March 1960, at the launch of the PAC's anti-pass campaign, Sobukwe resigned from his post as lecturer at the University of the Witwatersrand. He made last-minute arrangements for the safety of his family and left his home in Mafolo. He intended to give himself up for arrest at the Orlando police station in the hope that his actions would inspire other black South Africans. Along the 8-kilometer walk to the police station, small groups of men joined him from neighboring areas like Pifeni, Dube, and Orlando West. As the small crowd approached the station, most of the marchers, including Sobukwe, were arrested and charged with sedition. When an estimated group of 5,000 marchers reached Sharpeville police station, the police opened fire, killing 69 people and injuring 180 more. This was the Sharpeville massacre, and the day was commemorated as Sharpeville Day, as a response to it being called what it was, until it was changed under the ANC's attempt to seemingly erase their own and others' actual activism under apartheid. Sobukwe surrendered himself to the police as had been his intention, and he refused legal counsel under the morality principle of not giving validity to the apartheid government. On the 2nd of May 1960, he was sentenced to 3 years for incitement and was moved around during those 3 years. But shortly before his 1963 release, Parliament passed a General Amendment Act that later included what became known as the Sobukwe Clause, due to the fact that he was the only one it ever applied to. And this clause empowered the Minister of Justice to prolong the detention of any political prisoner indefinitely. The clause saw Sobukwe's stay in jail increased every year just before the previous one expired, and his 3-year sentence ended up lasting 9 years, with no explanation as to why, since Sobukwe ended up in Robben Island under solitary confinement for his entire 6-year term at the prison. When he was eventually released after he had reported being harassed by the guards, fed food with glass in it, and even being illegally operated on, he was banished from Johannesburg and moved to Kimberley, where he was under surveillance by the secret police. He was under 12 hours house arrest, had to receive permission to leave, and was ordered to report to the police station whenever he left the area, and to report to the police station of the area he was going to when he arrived at said place. Already in ill health, the conditions of his release greatly affected his ability to access adequate medical care. And by the time he was discovered to have lung cancer, the prison conditions under which he was forced to live further affected his ability to fight his cancer. And in 1978, 9 years after he was eventually freed, Sobukwe succumbed to the disease, leaving his wife and 4 children. So why does the Sobukwe clause matter to Africans now in 2023? For that, we need to look at this history chronologically. In 1957, Sobukwe, who had been diligently working as an activist and member of the ANC, had been a teacher and was a lecturer at Wits University. And he began editing The Africanist, a journal that leaned into Pan-Africanism. As his views and ideology matured, he began to criticize the ANC's reliance on white alliance. Hence, the criticism that ended up making him leave. He basically had all the same criticisms as Malcolm X. And he became so disenchanted with the organization that he led a faction away from it and formed his own Africanist organization in 1959. He held the position of PAC leader until 1962. That's a period of 3 years from the formation of the PAC. In that time, although outspoken, it was always clear that Sobukwe was a revolutionary scholar in mind who was willing to work on the ground with the people. But he wasn't a violent revolutionary. Well, if you solely consider physical violence to be the only type of violence, which I do not. But between 1959, when the PAC was formed, and 1960, when he was arrested, he was deemed so dangerous that an entire amendment was created to keep him suppressed and away from the masses. Not only that, but while imprisoned, he was isolated from all other prisoners on Robben Island. He was illegally operated on, fed food with glass in it, and was continuously harassed by prison guards. However, he could access books and clothes, and he obtained his degree in economics. In 1964, while unjustly imprisoned, he received a job offer from the NAACP in the US, and the minister, John Forster, denied his request to leave. In 1970, he applied for a position at the University of Wisconsin in the US, another move that would have gotten rid of him. And again, the apartheid government refused. When he again applied to leave South Africa permanently in 1971, the request was again denied. While under house arrest and unable to get gainful employment, Sobukwe again took to his books, and he became a lawyer in 1975, with the intention of opening a law practice in Kimberley, which he did. He was initially denied permission to enter the courts, but eventually it was allowed. However, newspapers were banned from quoting any of his arguments in court. He was diagnosed with lung cancer in 1977, and while hospitalized, only hospital staff and his wife and children were allowed in his room, no other visitors. And on the 27th of February 1978, he died. So over a 21-year period, and only 2 of those years being years where he was able to be active and vocal on the streets, what could have been so dangerous about Mangaliso Robert Sobukwe that it made the government brutalize him to death? Because he was brutalized to death. What was it about his Africanist ideals and the apartheid government that made him such a danger that he was kept in solitary confinement for 6 years? And why was he stopped from leaving multiple times? And why does the fact that an entire version of an act was created to control him?
To quote a minister of justice at the time who said that the man was like a prophet. He was able to move people to do whatever he wanted them to do. And that's what they were scared of. They were scared about. His power over people, his ability to talk to people, to understand people, and to lead people.
To understand the Sobukwe clause is to understand power. It's to understand that with 1 year of leadership, an ideology can be so dangerous that it trumps money, access to power, proximity to that power, and access to resources. Sobukwe had very little in the way of material wealth, as shown by the fact that his wife struggled a lot after he passed away. But while he was being brutalized, there were a number of Africans who were on the rise and amassing financial wealth, but only one of them was so dangerous that an entire system congregated to suppress him. But more than just suppress him, he was so dangerous that they made sure that they stopped him from being able to transfer his ideas at any cost.